realised looking at the last two films that they don't portray a very positive attitude to female characters. They're not very nice. But if you look at the broad spectrum of our work, if they're not, it's not all like that.
We have no problem with okay, so can I have...
Move the table, maybe?
I could move the table. That's a great idea.
Improvising. That's the first lesson in low-budget filmmaking.
All right. So one of the movies was 15,000. What's that in lei? 70,000 lei.
That's not going to work.
15,000 euro.
Yeah.
About 70,000 lei. One was 3,000. 13,000 lei.
Yeah.
And one was 80 euro. So 350 lei. Okay. So, can I have a show of hands for who thinks the first one? Who thinks the first one was 15,000? The most expensive. Who thinks the second one was the most expensive? Okay. Who thinks the last one was the most expensive? Okay. So most people think the second one was most expensive. All right. So, yes. Everyone got the last one right.
Yeah.
All right. So that was that. I wonder, can we have... Are the lights all or nothing? Or... No, they're all on or all off. We can't have...
That's not too bad.
That's better, isn't it? Okay, so what I want to do now is talk to you a little bit through each one of those films and just the practicalities. So this one, whatever turns you on. I have been making documentaries, and I've been to India making documentaries, and I've been all over. And then Amnesty International were looking for a human rights film. Amnesty International is big over here. You guys know Amnesty International? Yeah. So they were looking for a human rights film, and we sent them in an idea, and they liked it. So they gave us 15,000?
15,000, which included making 5,000 DVDs.
So they gave us 15,000 euro to... I'll go this way. Hold on.
Can you not limbo dance under that?
No. So they gave us 15,000 euros to make a film for Amnesty. And in this film there were 9 different scenarios, and we also had to make 5,000 copies of DVDs, all for this. And at that time then I got Bill said he would produce it.
Because I didn't know anything about producing.
You didn't know anything about
it? Because it was a ridiculously small budget for a ridiculously complex film.
So that did two things. It threw Bill in at the very deep end of producing to get this done. And it also made me realise I wasn't interested in doing any more documentaries, because once I made a film where you make a script and you hire actors and the actors do what's on the script, there's a beautiful artistic process, but also when you're happy with what you've captured, then you go home. Whereas with documentaries, I would spend time in the editing suite wondering what the hell am I going to do with this, because nobody said what I thought they were going to say, you know. So because of that relationship that we already had, and because I got excited about making films, I went to the Irish Film Board. Do you have a film board here in Romania? Yeah. So I went to the Irish Film Board and I said, look, I've been making documentaries, I want to make feature films, dramas. What do I do? And they said, well, we have schemes where you make a short film. And if you make if you're successful, many people apply to get the funding to make the short films. If you're successful in getting this funding and you make a short film and we like it, well then you become somebody that we want to work with and we know that we can trust you. So I wrote this film, Whatever Turns You On. And one of the things about the Irish Film Board is when you're making the application, they make you fill out all of the forms, all of the details in the very same way as if you were making a feature film for $1 million or 2 million euros. So it was a useful exercise. And also as part of that process, you have to have your producer. So Bill again agreed to be the producer, though I don't know why after the Amnesty film, which is a whole different story. So this is what we had. So I wrote the film. I got Bill on to be the producer. So Bill then started to look for a production manager, the assistant director, and continuity, and I looked for somebody I could work with on camera, sound, and then I let them, so the way this film worked, because we had €15,000, it was quite a decent amount. You see, it's only 2 scenes, so it was a decent budget. We were able to do all of this. Both of us and the person who was looking after the production management and props and things like that, we hired the actors. So what we did is we advertised on a website in Ireland. There are many websites where where actors go to look for work. There are 2 good ones in particular, and we got 300 applications. From those 300 applications, we chose 60 actors that we were going to see. And from those it came down, the girl we were decided we wanted this girl was perfect, but it came down to 2 actors. And this guy, if you saw him in the film, if we had put him in the film, maybe you would be crying in the seats. He was perfect in giving this kind of sad thing. This guy was kind of, funny and that. And we went with him, and it was a great decision, because I'll show you where the film went after this. The other thing was, we had got the store where it happens, the electronic store, was like a big multinational store. Do you have, you don't have Harvey Norman, I think, but maybe you have MediaMarkt for one of those? Big electronic store. And they said that when they were closed, they would leave the store open for 3 hours, and then we could shoot in the store. So the 3 hours are over and we're not finished. So we had to get the manager of the store and say, do you want to be in the film? And he was, okay. So at one point you see a little blur of red in behind the action. That's the manager of the store who left the store open for an extra 2 hours because he wanted to be in Hollywood.
Getting people involved is a good thing. With budget filmmaking, you get a lot of goodwill. I mean, there's a lot of goodwill anyway that you can use and catch in on, but getting the manager involved was a big thing, and him being positive about the movie.
One of the great things in low budget filmmaking is most people want to be in films.
Everybody loves films or making films.
So you can use that to help. So we got an extra 2 hours by putting the guy in the background. But then finally everyone had to, that was it. So when we went outside, we realised that the very first scene where he's sitting there with a cup, we hadn't shot that, and we'd no more time. So I got my car, and we put gel filters over the headlights of the car, and we shot the opening scene with lit by the headlamps of a car. So there was that bit of improvisation, and nobody ever knew. It was fine. So that was kind of the making process of that. And then so just with that it was a 15,000 film, and I think it's important to stop and think about that for a moment, because it didn't need to be a €15,000 film. That's what the film board gave us. And you'll probably talk about that a little, Bill will probably talk about that a little bit later, about the cost of money. When you get public money, every euro that you get costs you money, because you have to do things to get that money. So you'll talk about that a little bit later. But what happened then was, as part of the deal, as part of the film board giving us this money, they had organised a premiere in one of the biggest festivals in Ireland, which was the Galway Film Festival. And the second thing that they'd organised was a distributor. So we had an Irish distributor who was going to distribute our film. And then they had a DVD with maybe 20 short films that they had made. And our one began with W. And W comes towards the very end of the alphabet. So whoever was making the list forgot to add our film in. So when you looked at the DVD, it didn't look like, there was no mention of our film.
So if you want to make a film that gets to the top of the queue, make it about
beginning with A.
Aardvarks.
So at the time, because this was our first project and the first venture of going into the festival world, we didn't realise how important that was. So we said, oh, don't worry, it's fine, And then we started to wonder, why is our film not getting into any festivals? And we found out that the reason why is because the people in the festivals are receiving the DVD, they're looking and saying, oh, that sounds good, I look at this one, and they're making their decisions, but there's no mention of our film. So what we had to do is we had to start sending our own film to festivals. And that was in fact a it worked out as a very positive thing. Have you heard of Without a Box? Yeah. Without a Box is one of 2 or 3 websites where you send your films to festivals. So it's worth taking a note of that, withoutabox.com. And I'll show you, there's another one I'll show you now in a bit. But what you do is you fill in all of the details about your film, and you only have to do it once. And then every time that you want to send your film to a festival, you can just submit it from there. We'll talk about distribution later. From Without a Box, all of a sudden the festival entry we started getting the film into festivals. And we got into over 100 festivals all over the world. And out of those 100 festivals, we started to win awards. And as soon as we started to win awards, we started getting into more festivals, and the whole thing grew and grew. These festivals here, Moscow, Hollywood, they're all the different places that, for this little film that you saw at the start, these are all the places that flew me over, put me in hotels, all this kind of thing. We travelled around the world with that same little 4-minute film. And that's very nice, but apart from being very nice, we met a lot of very, very influential people within the film industry. So it's a very, very important part of your filmmaking process, is to travel with your film. And then the film won Aspen, Colorado, won the best film in Aspen, Colorado, and that qualified it for the Oscars, and we were shortlisted for the Oscars in 2010 with that little film. And I found myself on Wilshire Boulevard in Hollywood, and I had my, the can that holds the film, which I use now for my lunch, but I had my film in the can, and I'm standing outside the Academy of Motion Pictures in Hollywood, the place where I'm thinking next time I walk here might be, to get my name engraved on my Oscar, So it's a big black glass building, and I walked up and walked straight into the glass because the door was there. And that was my moment of almost glory, and then we didn't win, so that was the end of that story. But because it had been shortlisted for the Oscars, it meant that the Department of Education in Ireland used that film as part of the school curriculum in secondary schools. The University of Connecticut in the United States put it on the film curriculum for their students in there. And Etihad Airways bought these short films to show on the airlines. Then our distributor wasn't all that useless. They were doing work also. So they sold it to Canal Plus in France. They sold it to Channel 4 in the UK, SBS in Australia, RTE in Ireland, NBC Asia. How many people?
4 billion, well, whatever number of people are in Asia, I imagine.
4 billion people. And then France 2. So all over the world this film went. Also, there was a film called Kisses by a director called Lance Daly, which was very successful, and our film had a cinema release with that. So it went all over the world, and it did, with that little 4 minutes, it really established a career. I get a lot of work from the government of Ireland doing audiovisual stuff, because they think, oh, well, you won some awards, you must be good, and they hire me for this. So you cannot underestimate the power of a little film like that. Just go through this one. Again, this one was. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, well, this one looks like it cost more, and in fairness, we probably put a lot more into it. I think when you're making a film, you have to invest a lot yourself, in your time, and your expertise, and your equipment. So even though the budget was only 3,000, Declan put a huge amount into the special effects. We used a lot of our own equipment. I put my own money into it because I wrote it, and you're invested in the project. So while it's the budget that we got to make it was 2,000, we probably put more money to it.
So that's when I said it cost 3,000. I'm making allowance for money we put into it also.
Yeah, but I think if you are in the area of making low budget films, you have to have a lot of technical expertise. You have to edit your own stuff. If you can get as much equipment, borrow, beg or steal equipment, you can make it go a long way.
Be careful with that camera in case they steal. With this one, because Bill had written it, he brought me in to direct it. Now this is where the experience of doing the first one started to really be helpful. Because I'd already worked with the director of photography on the first film, I knew that he knew the way I liked to work, I knew the way he liked to work. So this relationship is really, really important. And the other relationship is sound guys, okay? The sound guy is the guy who sits there in the corner with a happy look on his face, and you know, you're looking at your director of photography to see what picture he's getting, and you think, yeah, that's good. And you're seeing the actors and you're thinking, that's good. And you look over at the sound guy and he goes, okay? And you think, it's good. Well, no, he's listening to Bob Marley. And it's only when you're in the editing suite and there's this junk of sound and he's gone on holidays and you're left in a terrible situation. So to get the right sound guy is just, when you find the right sound guy, marry him, right? I didn't, you know, like...
That was one sound guy for people. That's not meaning all sound guys.
I considered becoming gay and marrying the sound guy. No, seriously, like when you get the right people to work with, they're really, really, you know, it saves a lot. The other great thing was, because this was the second film that we'd made, we had already auditioned so many actors from the first one. When we had €15,000 to play with, we had a hotel room and we had to, you know, it was all very nice. So we had already a database of actors. So we didn't have to look, for example, for this guy. He's the same security guy from the first film. And we knew that we liked working with him. We were able to get him. So the audition process, we really only needed the mechanic at the end. And then, so it was a less complicated system. And again, it was the budget was a problem there because it was very complicated with all of this. And then trying to make the actress, you know, look like this. And that was just basically Photoshop. You know, we just used Photoshop for that. I'm going to just at this stage say, if anybody has any questions, because I'd like, you know, I'm just going to keep kind of going through it and all that kind of thing, but I'd like it, instead of me talking at you all the time, if you have any questions, just don't wait until the end. You know, just ask me along the way.
Like, do you think that the 15,000 budget was very high, or was that...
Well, yeah.
It's something you can... I mean, we kind of consider it to be lowish, but because you have to work within certain parameters. Once you get the money from the film board, you have to give them a budget and you have to spend a certain amount of money on the same kind of big budget stuff that a more expensive film costs.
We will go into budget a little bit later, and we'll go into this important issue of the cost of funded money. On these two films we showed you, any questions?
What would a short film cost to make in Romania, for example? 4 minutes or... Maybe €80.
One for the project, it was about making a bit of fun about women, and I budgeted it for like €7,000, but we only got half of it. And then because there was God involved, the sponsor would, so it got out eventually.
Yeah.
How long was that?
It was supposed to be 3 minutes. I'm gonna just give you the short version. An old lady walks into a church and she begs God to give his wonderful son a lady who's both beautiful and nice and respectful and good housewife and big bosom and whatnot. And then she hears a voice from above saying, I couldn't find this kind of woman for my son. But then eventually, of course, I don't want to make fun of God, eventually it turned out just to be a bricklayer who had just removed a brick from the steeple and divinely right.
That's great. And do you have this film?
No. It's still on the draft. And if you ever produce it, I'm going to sue it.
Yeah! You're recording this, aren't you?
Yes.
Just to look at this one, and this is a very, very, very interesting issue. Again, this was funded by the Irish Film Board. And because the Irish Film Board decided it was for virtual cinema, and virtual cinema is something that they ran on YouTube, so it was made for the internet. And the problem with being made for the internet is, because they thought it's not made for a big screen, it's made for a small screen, so we won't give you a big budget, we'll give you a small budget. That's the way the Film Board were thinking, which is ridiculous. But that's why the budget was so small for this. But the other problem was that because it was made for cinema, there was a difficulty then in terms of the distribution. Have I got that on there? No. There's a difficulty in terms of distribution because once it's shown on the internet, there are some festivals that won't allow it in their festival because it's been on the internet. Once it's been shown on the internet, your distributor finds it very hard to get people to pay for it. So there was a big question for filmmakers today. There was so much power in social media and a fantastic number of people to see your work. But then there was a financial loss in doing it that way. And so that's a question mark that we'll talk about in a little bit. But basically it went Irish Film Board, they had one screening to show them all, and then it went on YouTube, and that was that. Again, this was part of the Etihad Airways package of films that we sold them. Because we had now developed a relationship with our distributor from the first film, he took it and he sold it to Channel 4 and NBC, again, who didn't realise it had gone on there.
For this kind of movies, isn't VOD an option?
Video, yeah. Yeah, it is perhaps an option, and it's video on demand. More and more so, and I think now, I mean, we're talking about short films because it's easier to talk about that, and these principles apply to large films. But particularly with short films, I think that the world is changing because people are now watching content on their mobile phone, but they're not going to watch Pirates of the Caribbean on their mobile phone for an hour and a half or Lord of the Rings, but they will watch 4 minutes. So I think there's a great opportunity there in short films. We did send it to a few festivals, but again, because it was available on YouTube, we found very quickly that this was a great difficulty. So that was really the life of that film. And then finally, in terms of looking at those 3 films, we had this one. Now this had a whole different story.